Hi everyone, how are you doing? Sorry for I haven't been posting for a couple of days. I was actually in Toronto for a business trip and I was kind of occupied through work. But now I'm back and we're gonna go to solve another problem in LeetCode. This problem is actually kind of cool. It's called Decode String. It's one of the more popular ones being asked in Google, so I thought it would be appropriate to do it here. And it's fun because this reminds me of my childhood, where I'm not sure about you, but sometimes when you're a child, I guess in this day of era we don't do this anymore. But when I was a kid, we would write notes, but we also don't want teachers to catch what we wrote. So we would develop some sort of way to encode it, and as long as I give the password to someone, or not the password, but the decoding methodology to someone else, then they could actually take the note I passed to them and decode it and get the message from me. That was the old way of doing things, but now people probably just do it through text or whatnot. But anyways, I divest. Let's get back into this question. So this question is called Decode String. So relatively simple. You're given an encoded string, and you return its decoded string. Great. Like any decoding mechanism, you just need to know the rules, right? So let's look at the rules. The encoding rule is the following: k, an open bracket, encoded string, close bracket, where the encoded string inside the square bracket is being repeated exactly k times. Okay, simple enough. Note that k is guaranteed to be a positive integer. Okay, this is a key point. Remember what I mentioned, positive integer, right? And you may assume that the input string is always valid, no extra white spaces, no brackets, or square brackets are well formed. What this pretty much means is that you don't have to consider all those edge cases, right? You're gonna get some good, perfect string that's gonna be sent to you, not some like bullshit thing that's not well formed, right? Cool. Furthermore, you may assume that the original data does not contain any digits, and that digits are only for those repeated numbers. This is a very critical information, right? So what does that mean? It means that you'll never see a repeat. You could actually, if you see a character that equals to a number, that means it's always going to be representing how many times repeat the things within the square brackets, right? So meaning that things in the square brackets inside, they won't have any numbers. And that's very critical because that's going to be used as one of our key rules when solving this problem. Okay, so let's look at some quick examples. These are relatively self-explanatory. 3, you're going to repeat what's inside the bracket 3 times, so therefore it's going to be AAA. And then you're going to look at 2, and you're going to repeat that twice, so it's going to be BC. Simple enough, right? Same thing here. You have 3, and then you're going to repeat everything inside here, basically 3 times, right? But however, you need to note that, okay, remember they said that a number actually means what you're going to be repeating. So if we look at the character, cool, you're going to repeat A, but then make sure that you have this subsection, which is going to be CC, because you're repeating this to CC twice. So it's going to be ACC, right? Self-explanatory, very simple. So let's actually jump into the actual coding question. So before we start, I want to write some keynotes, right? So we know K is basically how many times we repeat stuff, right? The open bracket is basically telling us, okay, well, now I need to start storing what I want to repeat. And then we look at the close bracket, which is pretty much saying like, okay, well, when I get to that character, I better start repeating. Great. Now let's actually create the question, which is, I like to use ES6, so it's going to be decode string, which is going to be equals to the string that they pass in here. Great. So before looking into this question, right, we got to step back and think, what are they trying to ask us, right? How can we solve this? We know that, okay, on the first hand, we need to look at every single character, right? So therefore, because every character tells us something, right, of what to do. So we know there's going to be some sort of iteration on it. So it's going to be definitely O of n of something, right? It could be n of squared, quadratic, whatever it may be, but it's n of something, right? The next thing we have to think about, okay, how can we solve this? Now, for this case on the second part, if you think about it, it's almost like these are almost you're solving the same problem, but just over and over and over a time, right? Your same problem is like, as long as you give me a number and tell me what to repeat, just repeat it, right? And then give me a number, give me what to repeat it, right? It's almost very recursive in nature, and I believe if we wanted to, we could actually solve this question in a recursive way, right? But we have to stand back a little bit. Using recursion, although it's kind of cool and fun and it's a very important concept, it's actually very expensive in time complexity perspective, right? Because it's basically, you know, the more branches you have, the bigger the characters you have to decrypt. It's going to take a lot longer time to solve, right? So using recursion may not be the most optimal solution. So let's think of another way to solve this problem. So what we need to know is like, okay, we need to make sure that we iterate through all the characters, right? And then do something with it, right? We need to know what we're repeating, right? Or how many times we're repeating things, and what are we repeating, right? So maybe something we could start off is just, maybe we'll store that somewhere, right? As I iterate, maybe I'll store that information, and then do things as I approach to these different steps, right? So one of the things I'll probably start creating is like, okay, let's create some sort of way like multiplier, multiply. So these will tell me like rules of what I'm going to be multiplying, right? And then I'm going to go saying what's the substring, or repeat string. What am I repeating, right? Let's keep a stack of it, right? Let's just say like, okay, cool. I know the rule is like I'm going to repeat something, say 3 times, but like I'm going to repeat A 3 times, but I'm not finished iterating through each character, right? So let's just keep those in memory. So at the end, we could just like remove the stacks and actually start constructing our solution, right? So let's go back into here. We can multiply things, but okay, cool. So one of the things I remember we talked about, we need to, we'll take this example as a case, right? That's the example we're looking at. What do we need to do, right? We need to iterate through each of these elements and do something with it, right? Let's actually, I'm going to change this up. I'm going to use the more fun example because this is more complicated. This is a little bit too easy to solve. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do is make sure I iterate through all this whole thing. So I'm going to go for let the character of s being this particular string. I want to look at every character and decide to do something with it, right? Well, remember the 3 rules I mentioned above here? Maybe a good start would be, okay, let's create some conditions to do something for each of these rules, right? So let's look at, okay, well, let's check if the character is a number, right? So if for those who don't know, is none basically checks whether a string value can be interpreted as a number. If it can be, it'll return like a 0. So therefore, having this bang method, as in like, okay, if it's a 0, then I'm gonna make sure that it's falsy, and then you convert it back in so it'll become true. So what I'm gonna do, right? If I know that, okay, I'm looking at this first character, cool, it's gonna do something. Maybe my next condition will be like, else if my character equals to this open bracket, I'm gonna do something again, right? Else if my character is equal to this close bracket, I'm going to do more stuff, right? And then the final condition would be, well, what if it's not a number? It's not this open bracket, it's not this closed bracket, but it's just something like an A, for example. What do we do with that, right? We'll have to do something here. I'm not going to fill it in yet. And let's make sure that, okay, well, let's not forget, what are we actually doing in this? What are we returning, right? So we're returning a string. So let's just dedicate that as a solution, right? I'm going to create a solution, right? That's what we're returning. So just make sure that we return that right away so we don't forget. One of the things that I remember some folks going into interviews or when I'm interviewing them is they forget to actually return the final response. It's kind of, because you're so nerve-wracking in the interview, you kind of forget about it. But what I like to do is like generally structure things in a high level before I fill the meat in, and make sure I return what I need to return, which is the solution. Great. All right. So let's look at this example. What can we do? So we're going to check if this first character, because we're going to go check the first character, it's 3. So what do? We check if it's a number. Great, it is a number. But what do we do if it's like a 31, right? This is a number. This is also a valid number. So we just need to make sure we're constructing a full number before we start storing it into our multiplier, right? So one thing, or one little trick I like to do is actually, I'm gonna create a temporary thing, temp multiplier, multi, it's good enough, 10 mult, will just be a string. And I'm gonna use some really nice magic, it's called template literals, and then construct these elements, because as we iterate, what are we really doing, right? We're just basically taking this character and putting it in here, and then to make sure when we iterate the second character, make sure it's at the end, right? So what we can actually do here is gonna go temp mult will equal to this, bam. We're gonna put the temp mult in here, right? And also include the actual character, right, in the question. Okay, cool. So what does this do? It's like when we look at 3, it's gonna go here, it's a character, great. Your first solution is gonna be like, okay, well, this is gonna be a 3, right? Is it an open bracket? No. Is it a closed bracket? No. So we already went to this condition, so it won't even go to the else statement, right? So it's gonna go, okay, cool. Now look at 1. What is it gonna do? Okay, well, 1 is a character. Let's actually make sure our mult in this case was gonna be 3, and we're gonna plus the character, which is the 1 here. So this particular one would be 31, right? Great. Now let's iterate to the next character, which is this open bracket. So once we are in the open bracket, what do we want to do? So when we open bracket, we remember what we set up here. Now we need to start storing what we want to repeat, right? If we take that statement, you can think about, okay, well, what do we need to store to know what we're going to repeat? Well, we're going to need to know like how many times we're repeating things and what are we repeating, right? So let's actually go in here and look at, okay, my multiply dot push. I'm going to push the temp mult in here, right? And make sure that I reset it mult to be, because I already stored it, so I need to make sure I reset it so it doesn't like increase into 321, then that's a bad idea. So this pretty much stores me like, okay, now I know I need to repeat something, 31 times, which in this case it would be 3, but not 31. But in our case, it'll be 31. So in this array, it looks like this, 31 right now, right? And the next thing we need to do is make sure that repeat string, we're gonna actually start storing stuff into it, right? So repeat string dot push. What are we repeating? I'm gonna go repeat the solution, and I make sure the solution, I'm resetting it over here. Back to that. Great. So, oops. So when we look at this, when we hit into this particular bracket, what are we doing, right? Well, we're just saying like, okay, are we repeating anything? No. So in this case, we're gonna actually put in here, it's gonna be an empty, right? Because we already said that, okay, well, solution is gonna be an empty if I don't store anything. So we don't have anything fall in this bracket, but we're in here. So in here, we know that, okay, let's store the multiplier. We're gonna multiply something by 31 times. We don't have that thing yet, so let's put it here. That's fine, and that's cool. So let's then go next condition. Okay, well, we know that we have to go in A, right? Is it a number? No. Is it an open bracket? No. Is it a closed bracket? No. But we need to do something with it, right? So now, because we are within the brackets in here, we should probably start constructing a substring of sort, right? That is to be repeated. So I'm just going to reuse this thing called the solution because it's a good way to keep back our substring. So solution will basically be equal to the character, right? It's going to equal to its existing solution plus character. In this case, our solution was the empty string plus the A right now, which is going to basically effectively be A. That's what's going to happen when we go into A, right? Now, remember this thing over here, our string actually is going to be that right now because we resetted it. Cool. So we'll look at 2 now. Okay, well, what is 2? We're going to go in here. It's a 2. Great. Construct 2. Great. Move on. Now we're going to open bracket again. Okay, well, what's that going to do? We're going to go in here, put the 2 in here. We're going to kill off the 2, reset it. And we're going to start pushing the solution, which we have over here, being A. And I'm going to kill out the solution again. Boom. So this is going to be empty, right? So I'm here into this close bracket. Now the next thing is going to put the C. What's going to happen with the C? We're going to dump it in here, right? Because we're going to look at, okay, well, the solution C, great. It doesn't follow any of these conditions. It's going to put here, great. So let's move on to the next. Okay, now this is our first closed bracket, right? What are we doing in this closed bracket? Remember what I said the rule up here? Saying closed bracket is basically when we start repeating stuff, right? So let's write some logic to that. Now, what I want to do is pretty much go solution. I'm going to plus, equal to something, right? What's that something? So let's actually look at what we need to know. Okay, so we need to know that, okay, we're going to be repeating all this stuff a certain amount of times, right? So let's actually look at that. So we know that, okay, well, I'm going to go and look at my repeated string, right? Repeat string dot pop, right? So I'm basically taking that and putting the A in here. So in this case, it'll be like A, great. But I'm not done, right? Because I need to make sure it's going to be A, C, C. So how are you going to get the C, C? We remember over here in all the things that we stored, C is right here, right? So we can actually just go plus the existing solution, type repeat. And how many times are we repeating that CC, right? We look in here. Well, this tells us multiplier. So multiply dot pop. So I'm taking the last element and I'm going to go, okay, cool. I'm going to repeat this C twice. So that's going to be CC. Great. My solution is going to be ACC. So here, theoretically, it's going to be ACC. That's my solution, right? Are we done? Not quite done yet, right? So next part is like, well, since we already popped these two elements, our existing array has this, right? Now we're entering our second component here, which is like, okay, well, that's great. I repeated what's in here once now, but I need to repeat this 31 times, right? In order to do that, we have to make sure going back in here. Well, it's a closed bracket. What's going to happen, right? In this case, it's going to be, or what's our repeated? What are we popping, right? We're popping an empty thing. So this is going to basically be something empty, right? And we're plussing basically the solution, which in our case is ACC, 31 times, right? So that means like this would solve this problem. And I think we have our solution. So let's run and check it out. Of course, it's not gonna run 31 times. In our test case right here, I'll just delete that. In the test case here, you know, it should have this solution. So let's try running it. Run the code. Great. Let's try putting some more advanced things like this. Boom. Put the test case in here. For those who don't know, you can actually put your own custom test case. Run. Ooh, it's chugging along. Must be a lot of people using it. Great. Cool. I got the right solution. Now the big drum roll is to see if this actually is good enough to solve the problem. Submit. And great. We beat 88% of most folks. So this problem was kind of fun. I know I've had it solved a couple times. I got stuck in one of those engineer mentalities, which is trying to optimize as much as possible so I can prepare for you guys. But pretty much this is a fun problem, teaching you how to break things into steps. I hope you learned something here. I'm going to continue to do some of these questions throughout the week as well. Please let me know some feedback if you like this way I'm doing the solving, or would you like to see a whiteboarding solution? I could do either or, but hope you enjoy the show. If you like it, please hit that sub and ring the bell. Thanks. Bye.